The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of Ethan Carter's life. Instead, it was the day he finally learned who had been lying to him for 23 years. He stood at the altar in a black tuxedo, surrounded by hundreds of people who had flown in from across the country. Politicians, billionaires, business executives, old family friends. Every person in that room had a reason to smile. Then the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Maria walked in. She was wearing the same simple black uniform she'd worn almost every day for the past 6 years. She looked terrified. And she was holding a small brown envelope against her chest. Ethan's bride, Vanessa, turned toward her. Her smile disappeared. "Security," Vanessa whispered. But Maria didn't move. She looked straight at Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice shaking, "before you marry her, you need to know what your mother left you." The entire ballroom went silent. Ethan stared at her. "What did you just say?" Maria swallowed. "Your mother didn't die the way you were told." A murmur spread through the crowd. Vanessa's face went pale. Richard Vale, standing near the front row, suddenly stood up. "Maria," he said sharply, "you need to leave." Ethan looked at him. Then back at Maria. For the first time that morning he noticed something strange. Richard wasn't confused. He wasn't surprised. He looked scared. And that was when Ethan realized. Maria hadn't interrupted his wedding to ruin it. She had come to save him. 6 years earlier, Maria Rodriguez had arrived at Ethan's mansion with one suitcase and a recommendation from a cleaning agency. She wasn't supposed to become important. She was supposed to clean rooms, prepare breakfast, organize laundry, and stay invisible. That was how the Carter household worked. The wealthy had problems. The staff had jobs. And nobody mixed the two. Maria understood that. She never asked personal questions. Never complained. Never touched anything she wasn't supposed to. But she noticed everything. She noticed Ethan never ate breakfast when he was stressed. She noticed he stayed awake until 3 in the morning after business meetings. She noticed he kept his mother's old photograph in a drawer instead of displaying it. And she noticed something else. Ethan was lonely. Deeply lonely. He had inherited billions before he was old enough to understand what money meant. But money had never taught him how to trust people. His father had died when Ethan was 17. His mother had died 3 years later. After that, Richard Vale became the closest thing Ethan had to family. Richard had been his father's business partner. He helped Ethan take control of the company. He taught him how to negotiate, how to fire people, how to protect his fortune, how to never let anyone see weakness. And Ethan trusted him. Completely. Until Maria came along. One night, Ethan came home after midnight. He threw his keys onto the table. "You're still awake." Maria looked up from the kitchen. "I could ask you the same thing." Ethan almost smiled. "Long day. Bad day. Same thing." Maria pushed a plate toward him. "Eat." Ethan stared at it. "Is that an order?" "Yes." He laughed. It was small. But real. Maria smiled. "See? You can still do that." "Do what?" "Smile." Ethan looked down. "I smile. At shareholders. That's different." "Very." For the first time in months, Ethan actually laughed. And neither of them knew that someone was standing in the hallway listening. Richard. He had come to deliver documents. But he never knocked. He simply watched. And when Ethan finally went upstairs, Richard looked at Maria. "Stay away from him." Maria frowned. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me. Mr. Vale, I work here." "You work for Ethan." Maria stared at him. "Exactly." Richard stepped closer. "You don't know what you're getting involved in." Maria's expression changed. For just a second, something flashed in her eyes. Fear. Not of Richard. Of what she knew. "I think," she said quietly, "I know more than you think." Richard froze. Then he walked away. A year later, Ethan announced his engagement to Vanessa Blake. Vanessa was perfect on paper. Beautiful. Educated. Wealthy. Connected. Her family owned one of the largest luxury hotel chains in the country. The engagement became front-page news. Everyone loved the couple. Everyone except Maria. She couldn't explain why. There was something about Vanessa that bothered her. Not because she was rich. Not because she was arrogant. It was something else. Vanessa had once walked into Ethan's office and seen a photograph of his mother. She stared at it for several seconds. Then she asked Maria, "Where did you get that?" Maria frowned. "It's Ethan's mother's photograph." Vanessa smiled. "Of course." But her voice had changed. Maria remembered that moment. And she remembered something else. The next morning, the photograph was gone. "Where is it?" Maria asked Ethan. What? Your mother's picture. Ethan looked confused. What picture? The one from your office. I didn't move it. Maria's stomach tightened. Someone had. But she didn't know who. 3 months before the wedding, Maria found the envelope. It was hidden inside an old wooden box in the basement. She had been cleaning after a pipe burst when the box fell from a shelf. The lid cracked open. Inside was a photograph, a handwritten letter, and a tiny silver key. Maria recognized the handwriting immediately. Ethan's mother. Her hands began to shake. She read the first line. Maria, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Maria sat down. She read the entire letter. And by the time she finished, tears were running down her face. Ethan's mother had known she was being betrayed. Not by a stranger. By Richard. Years earlier, Richard had secretly transferred ownership of several Carter Company assets into shell companies he controlled. But that wasn't the worst part. Ethan's father had discovered it. He planned to expose Richard. Then 2 weeks later, Ethan's father died in what everyone had called a tragic boating accident. Maria's breathing stopped. She kept reading. His mother had spent years collecting evidence. She had hidden everything before her own death. And the silver key? It opened a safety deposit box. Inside that box was the proof. Maria didn't hesitate. She went to Ethan. Mr. Carter, we need to talk. Ethan looked up from his desk. What's wrong? I found something. What? About your parents. His expression hardened. My parents. Maria nodded. I think your father was murdered. Ethan stared at her. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes the mind laughs when it can't handle what it's hearing. Maria, stop. I'm serious. Where did you hear this? I didn't hear it. She placed the letter on his desk. I found this. Ethan read the first few lines. His face changed. Where did you get this? Your mother wrote it. He stood. Who else knows? Maria hesitated. Richard. Ethan's eyes narrowed. What does Richard know? I think he knows everything. Ethan grabbed the letter. You're telling me my father was killed because of a business deal? I'm telling you your mother believed it. That's not proof. I know. Then why are you telling me? Maria looked directly at him. Because your wedding is in 3 months. Ethan stared at her. What does my wedding have to do with this? Maria didn't answer. And that silence terrified him more than anything she could have said. 2 weeks later, Maria disappeared. Ethan couldn't find her. Her room was empty. Her phone was disconnected. The agency said she had resigned. No explanation. No goodbye. Ethan was furious. He called her repeatedly. Nothing. Then Richard showed up. I heard Maria left. Ethan looked at him. Did you know? Richard sighed. She wasn't stable. What does that mean? She became obsessed with your parents' deaths. Ethan's jaw tightened. You knew. I knew she had been asking questions. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was trying to protect you. Ethan stared at him. For once, tell me the truth. Richard looked him in the eyes. I am. And Ethan wanted to believe him. Because believing Richard was easier than believing his entire childhood had been a lie. 3 weeks before the wedding, Vanessa found Ethan sitting alone in his office. You look exhausted. I am. She sat beside him. Is this about Maria? Ethan looked at her. Why would you say that? Vanessa paused. I've seen how attached you are to her. She's worked for me for years. That's not what I mean. Ethan stood. Don't? Vanessa's expression hardened. You defend her more than you defend me. Because she's never given me a reason not to trust her. Vanessa looked away. That sentence hit harder than Ethan expected. Do you trust me? She asked. Ethan didn't answer. And for the first time, Vanessa looked afraid. The night before the wedding, Ethan found a package outside his bedroom. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed his father standing beside Richard. On the back were 4 words. Look at the date. Ethan did. The photograph had been taken 2 days after the date his father supposedly died. Ethan's hands went cold. Impossible. He called Richard. No answer. Then his phone buzzed. One message. From Maria. I'm sorry. Ethan stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. I tried to warn you. The third came 10 seconds later. Trust nobody at your wedding. And now Ethan was standing at the altar. Maria was holding the envelope. Vanessa was asking security to remove her. Richard was shouting. And Ethan finally understood. This wasn't about Maria. It was about him. Let her speak, Ethan said. Richard turned. Ethan? I said let her speak. Maria walked forward. She placed the envelope in Ethan's hands. Your mother gave this to me 6 years ago. Ethan stared at her. 6 years? Maria nodded. She asked me to keep it hidden until I knew who I could trust. And you waited 6 years? I tried to protect you. By hiding the truth? By keeping you alive. The room went silent. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a second letter. His mother's final message. He read it. His eyes filled with tears. Then he looked at Vanessa. She was crying. But not because she was heartbroken. Because she knew. Ethan slowly turned toward her. How long? Vanessa said nothing. How long have you known? She shook her head. Ethan. How long? Richard stepped forward. Enough. Ethan looked at him. Richard's face had lost all color. You really think you're going to destroy me over a dead man's business records? Ethan's voice was quiet. You killed my father. Richard laughed bitterly. Your father was going to destroy everything. Did you kill him? Richard said nothing. Ethan stepped closer. Answer me. Richard finally snapped. He was going to take everything from me. There it was. The confession. Hundreds of people heard it. Someone in the crowd gasped. A phone was recording. Richard realized his mistake. But it was already too late. Ethan turned toward the giant screens behind the altar. Maria nodded. The evidence appeared. Bank transfers. Hidden companies. Signed documents. Photographs. Messages. Years of fraud. Years of lies. And then one final document. A life insurance policy. Richard had changed the beneficiary days before Ethan's father's death. The room erupted. Security surrounded Richard. Vanessa backed away. Ethan looked at her. Did you know? She covered her face. My father knew. And you? She cried. I found out last year. Ethan's expression broke. You knew. I was going to tell you. When? She couldn't answer. After the wedding? Silence. That was answer enough. Ethan didn't marry Vanessa that day. He didn't scream. He didn't humiliate her. He simply removed the ring. And placed it on the table. I'm sorry, he said. Vanessa looked up. For what? For believing you were someone you weren't. Then he walked away. Not toward the crowd. Not toward the cameras. Toward Maria. She was standing near the doors. You saved me, Ethan said. Maria shook her head. Your mother did. Ethan looked at her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Maria's eyes filled with tears. Because every time I tried, someone disappeared. Ethan froze. What? Maria looked toward Richard being escorted away. I wasn't the first person your mother trusted. She took a breath. I was the last. Months later, Ethan discovered the full truth. Richard was prosecuted. The stolen assets were recovered. Ethan created a foundation in his parents' names. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was personal. He stopped measuring people by what they owned. He stopped assuming kindness had a price. And he stopped treating trust like weakness. Maria no longer worked as his maid. Ethan offered her a position running the foundation. She refused at first. Then she laughed. You really don't know how to take no for an answer, do you? Ethan smiled. I've been told that. By who? Everyone. Maria shook her head. Good. They stood on the steps of the foundation's new building. A group of children were waiting inside for their first scholarship ceremony. Ethan looked through the glass doors. Then at Maria. Do you ever regret coming into that house? She smiled. Not for a second. Even after everything? Maria nodded. Especially after everything. Ethan looked down. There's something I never told you. What? When you walked into my wedding that day? Maria smiled. You thought I was going to ruin your life. I did. And now? Ethan looked at the people waiting inside. Now I think you gave me one. Maria smiled. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like the richest man in the room. He felt like the luckiest. Because he had finally learned something money had never taught him. You can lose every dollar you own and still rebuild your life. But if you lose the people who stood beside you when you had nothing left to give, some things can never be bought back. And sometimes, the person standing quietly in the background of your life isn't there because they're beneath you. They're there because when everyone else walks away, they're the one who stays. If you believe that true character matters more than money, remember this story. Because the richest person in the room isn't always the one wearing the most expensive suit. Sometimes, it's the person who has the courage to tell you the truth when the truth could cost them everything. And that was the real gift Maria brought to Ethan's wedding. Not a wedding present. Not an apology. The truth.